Hey there, interactive developers. Jack DiLaura here with the Interactive and Immersive HQ. In this video, we're going to take a look at some updates to the DMX Control Console with the release of Unreal Engine 5.3. These include things like the ability to create custom layouts of the faders in the console, as well as a newly improved search function, which lets us filter specific faders or fixtures that we're looking to manipulate, and giving us the ability, as we can here, to adjust one specific fader of a bunch of fixtures at the same time, as well as a couple of other updates. Stick around, we'll dive into all of that in just a moment. For this example, I'm using the DMX template under Film, Video, and Live Events in the New Project window. Once you've loaded up the DMX template, head to the Maps folder and find the water fountain level, which we'll double click on, and this will be the map that we're using for this example. The next thing you'll want to do is to head over to the outliner, where we're going to scroll down and find the ls_water fountain object, which is a level sequence actor. We're going to click on that, come down to the details panel, and turn off this autoplay switch. This will enable us to utilize the DMX console and not have it sort of fighting for control over the light fixtures in the scene. If you don't have the DMX console up already, we can head up here to the DMX drop-down menu, find the Control Console option, and open it as an external window. Then we can click and drag on the title bar here and dock it to our user interface, or you could continue working with it as an external window. Then we'll need to provide a DMX library of fixtures and patches that we want to work with. Thankfully, this demonstration content has that already set up for us. So I can click this None drop down and find the DMX lib_water fountain, which is a DMX library that's already been set up. So you'll notice that as soon as I select the DMX library that I want to use, the patches will populate in this list below. To be able to see the results of our changes in real time, I'm going to enter the play mode. Then I'll move the camera a little bit closer, and then we can start sending DMX in the control console. Now, what should happen if I click on, say, Fountain Patch here, and first change the mode start value to 255, and then maybe crank up the velocity, I should be seeing the water fountain here on the left activate and start shooting water out of it. But I wanted to point out that I've noticed potentially a bug, either a bug or a feature, I'm not sure. However, when I first start working with the control console in my project, I have to click the DMX drop down here, toggle the receive DMX switch once, and as soon as I do that, then the controls from the console become active and I can start manipulating things in real time. Finally, let's go ahead and set up our scene here so that we have all of the lights and fountains active. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and then left click Fountain Patch 4. Then I will head over to the layout portion of my console. I'm going to hit Control A to select all of the patches that I've added, and then I can simply left click on any one of the faders in this portion of the window, and it will set all of these values the same across the board. We'll see then that we have all of the fountains active. I'm going to do the same thing by clicking on Fountain Light _ patch and then holding down Shift, left clicking Fountain Light Patch 4. And then I'm going to head to the layout section with my faders, hit Control A, and then I'm going to increase all of the fader values to their maximum as a group. Now let's take a look at the new features. So first of all, we have the new option of using a user or a default layout of our faders. In the default mode, whatever patch we have selected over here on the left will appear in the layout portion of the window. If we select multiple patches, those will also appear. And likewise, we can selectively choose, instead of selecting as a group, individual faders as well. Although the default mode works and is handy for making quick adjustments, it does have its limitations, and that is where the new user mode comes in. So you'll notice that when we switch over to the user mode, no longer does selecting the particular patch make it appear on the right. Instead, we have some options here to add these patches to our layout. We can add them all as a group, or we can add them independently. And I'm going to start off by doing this independently just to show you some of the additional options here. So if I click Add Patch, you'll see that we start off with the option to create a new row and add this patch to that row. And any subsequent fader or patch that we want to add to our console, we have the choice to place it to the right of the patch that already exists or the row that we're currently working on, or we can add it to the next row. So in this way, we can start to customize the placement of these particular patches and faders within our console setup. We can choose to not have particular faders in the setup as well, and get a little bit more granular with the way that things are set up. Another important component of the user mode is that we can actually save our layouts and recall them at any point. So right now I've got a default layout 0 created, which is the two faders that I've currently set up. I can click on the pencil icon here to rename this to something else, like custom layout or something. And then if I click on this drop down, we can see that that appears in the options below. I can also then add an additional layout by hitting the plus sign. And as soon as I do that, you can see I now have my two custom layouts in this menu, and I can flip back and forth between them at any point that I want. So very useful for both customizing and being able to then swap between different custom layouts. Another thing I wanted to point out, speaking of layouts, is that we have this layout option at the top, which lets us choose whether or not we want the fixtures to be organized in a grid, horizontally or vertically. And this is still functional even when we're in this user layout mode. So regardless of whether we're in the default mode or the user mode, we have the choice to change how things are laid out. Next up, let's have a look at our search function. So the search function has been improved and now gives us even more options for getting granular with the controls that we are selecting. So I'm going to head back to the default mode here. And I think we'll start off by selecting all of our fountain patches as a group. So again, I've started off with the fountain patch at the top selected, and then I'm shift left clicking on fountain patch 4 to select all of those as a group. Now let's say that I want to, for example, adjust the velocity of all of the fixtures together as a group. If I were to simply try to select all of the controls within my layout at the moment by hitting Control A, this wouldn't allow me to independently control the velocity fader for all of my fixtures at once. It would actually cause all of the controls to be adjusted. And so with the search option over here on the right, we can, as we can see by mousing over, use the fader name to filter for that specific fader control. We also can use a bunch of other aspects of these controls, including the universe that they are sending out on. So there are many ways to kind of filter and choose between the controls that we want to have access to. But for example, if I want to grab this velocity fader for each one of the fountain patches in my scene, I can simply type in or start typing in the name velocity into that search bar. And you'll see that before I've even finished typing it up, we then have filtered the controls for the relevant results. So now with all of these selected, I can then control the velocity specifically for all of my fixtures as a group. Now, likewise, as we can see from that pop-up, I can also add additional search terms to this as well. So we don't have to just filter out a single control at a time. We can actually filter out multiple controls to be manipulated as well. This could also be helpful, say, if the velocity controls that we want to manipulate are on a different universe or a specific universe for a subset of devices. Say we have 10 of these fountains instead, and we only want to access and manipulate the first 5, which are on universe 1, we could then filter using the search term to access those controls. Let's take a look at this in practice again by looking at the fountain light patches. So I'm going to start off by left-clicking on fountain light underscore patch, and then again shift-clicking on the last fountain light patch there. Now we can look at filtering multiple faders at the same time. So I can search for the red channel by typing that in, and then by adding a comma in, I can then add an additional search term. So I can search for the green channel or the blue channel. And you can see here with each subsequent term, I have then added additional faders into the mix. Then we can, just like before, adjust these as a group if we so choose. So this is a great new feature to have, and I could definitely see this being very useful when we've got a situation with hundreds of fixtures instead of just the couple that we have in this scene. Next up, let's have a look at the new control options. So for this, I'm just going to select a single fountain light patch, and then I'm going to set my green channel. Oops, I want to select that or deselect all the channels and set my green channel to 0. If we take a look at the control dropdown, we can see that we have 2 different modes. By default, we're going to be in the absolute mode, and we'll take a look at how that functions right now. If we come back to our set of faders here and then hit Control A to select them as a group, as soon as I make an adjustment to any of these faders, I want you to watch the green channel here. So I'm going to drag on the blue channel down, and you'll see as soon as I click on the blue channel and start to change it, the green fader is automatically set to the same value that the blue channel has been set to. So likewise, if I had, say, all of the faders set to something different, and then I maybe this time click on the red channel and drag it up to like 10 or 50 or whatever, all of the faders are going to be set to the same value. So with absolute mode, we're going to be setting all of the faders that we have selected to the same value, regardless of whatever position they're at currently. In the relative mode, things work a little bit differently. Once again, I'm going to set these faders to a different value each, and then we'll select these all as a group. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the green fader here and start moving that up and down. And we'll see that instead of setting all of the faders to the same value, we're kind of keeping that proportional relationship that we'd set up with each of the faders being set to a different value. So this is very useful for this particular example where we have this blue color set up, and we can use this kind of relationship that we've set up along with the relative mode to change the brightness of the color without sort of losing that blue tone that we'd initially defined. So these new control options are very useful for, again, being able to have a little bit more control over the way that you are manipulating the fixtures in your scene, and also being able to, again, take into account the initial settings that you've created and sort of keep the relationships you've set up even as you're starting to adjust the controls. Let's take a look then at our last feature today, which is the ability to choose whether or not specific patches and or faders are actively sending DMX. So we have the fountain light patch object selected over here on the left, and you'll notice that there's a checkbox to the left of it. I can click on that, and we'll see here that all of my faders now have a dash rather than in the previous situation where they all had a check. As soon as I turn that off and then start making adjustments to my faders, we'll notice that nothing has changed in our scene. And that's because we have deactivated the active sending of these fader values as DMX data. So I can turn that back on, and you will see as soon as we do so, the light has updated, or the values that are being sent to the light have updated with the current state of the faders, causing the light to change to white. Now, I can also do the same thing for faders independently rather than having to disable the entire patch. So I could turn off, say, this red channel and then manipulate this fader as much as I want and nothing's going to happen, while still having the ability to adjust the other faders in this particular patch. So again, this is just another great way of being able to filter out and control specifically what we are doing with our DMX information. And I could definitely see this being very useful for things like testing fixtures in a real space. So that's it for the new features added to the DMX console with the 5.3 update. Hope this has been useful for you to take a look at. And as always, thanks for watching. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like our YouTube content, I highly recommend you check out the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community for immersive design, touch designer, and creative tech pros. In the HQ Pro trainings, we cover almost any topic you can think of, and we go way more in depth than we do in our YouTube tutorials. We have a private group where Matthew Reagan, myself, and our other industry veteran and pioneer teachers answer your questions every single day. If that sounds cool, click the link in the description to learn more. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more free touch designer and immersive content.